Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Say these mosquitoes, they don't bite people, they just mate with the females, and they're modified so that the offspring die off. The lethality gene they put in, it actually doesn't kill all the mosquitoes. It only kills the females. The males go on living. In other words, the GMO mosquitoes do bite humans. Some of the programs are about using the mosquitoes for other things, like vaccinating people against their will. In September 2022, NPR declared that the researchers had successfully vaccinated people using these GMO mosquitoes. One of the lead scientists on the program told the publication that we use the mosquitoes like they're 1,000 small flying syringes. Well, look, what's the big concern here? Well, partially true narratives are being used to roll out a program to release GMO insects.
I just don't get this, and there may be an explanation for it, but how do they determine how much of a vaccine to put into these mosquitoes? How do they keep you from getting too much of a vaccine if you get bit more than once? What if you've already had the vaccine these things are carrying and don't need it again? What happens if these things infect other animals with the vaccine? Have we done tests to make sure that there won't be any negative side effects from these things if they bite a cow or the family dog? This sounds about as good of an idea as the vaccines and food. Just another way for them to force you to do something against your will. Don't want to get this experimental injection? Well, you got to go outside sometime. Can you believe that there are actually people out there who still believe the government is here to protect and provide for us, even knowing stuff like this is happening?
This pork company, which produces 1 out of 4 pigs in America. The Chinese government owns this company now. China is buying up all this farmland. They're growing their pig food here, feeding the pigs, and then shipping the pigs to China.
Using our resources.
Where's the line?
There's not really laws put in place for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now they're starting to pick up on it, because I think Florida and Texas put out this thing where the Chinese government cannot buy any farmland. Another example was Saudi Arabia. At one point, Saudi Arabia was the nation's 5th largest grain producer. It's a desert country, right? So what they did was they tapped into all their aquifers. In the whole desert, they just pumped full of water to grow this grain. Well, guess what? Aquifers ran out. What they've been doing is going to different nations, buying land to grow grain. An example was in Arizona. They bought a crap ton of land, tapped into the aquifers, and they're sucking all the water up. So all these surrounding homes, all of their wells are dry now. But there's no law that restricts how much you can pump out of the aquifers.
How do you rein all this back in? It's like, can you?
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They're not going to rein it all in because they don't care. It's not the well in their houses that's dried up. I've known for years that China and others were buying up large swaths of our farmland, but didn't really know what the point of it was. This is just mind-blowing that we allow this to happen. We're letting these other countries use up all of our resources to feed their people while we have people in our streets starving to death. And it seems like we're constantly at risk of food shortages with all these food plant fires, and then there's the fear of the bird flu causing them to destroy hundreds of thousands of chickens and halt egg production. Something absolutely needs to be done to stop this. This is just another example of China getting the better end of the bargain and screwing us over whenever it comes to doing business with the United States. I think they've given us plenty enough reason already that we should just stop doing business with them altogether. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and you like this kind of content, I post a new one just like it every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. It'd be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back on Monday to join me. Also, don't forget to check out our new podcast. The link to the episode is in the description.
Do we live in a simulation? ChatGPT says,
you might argue that the probability of an intelligently designed universe is close to 100%.
I think, therefore I am. The observer effect suggests that reality is subjective, that things manifest via observation. In quantum physics, the double slit experiment showed that we have wave-particle duality, that basically everything is in waveform until we observe it, then it manifests into particles, as in matter. And if you look at the definition of matter, look, it says, physical substance in general as distinct from mind and spirit in physical, that which occupies space and possesses rest mass, especially as distinct from energy. That's one definition of matter, but then remember this one, be of importance, have significance. You know, it matters or it doesn't matter. This suggests that things matter when we materialize it via observation or our mind. I think, therefore I am. Now we all know the power of thought, but what if this is reality itself? That what we believe, we see. Not what we see, we believe. I always say that science is man's imperfect conclusion of God's perfect creation, and now the people at the front lines of modern physics and science all say, well, this must mean that we're in a simulation created by aliens. Which, whatever, it's a better theory than it all came by random occurrences and explosions, but I see it as we live in this energetic field. And yes, our observation does manifest reality, but have you ever listened to near-death experiences? The people cross over to the spirit realm, and when they come back, their family is like, oh, you must have been dreaming, or that was a release of DMT, it was a hallucination, and they all say, no, where I just was more real than this. This life is but a dream compared to where I was. So if even a supercomputer like ChatGPT is saying things like,
The probability of an intelligently designed universe is close to 100%.
then we could only assume that it is true. We do live in an intelligently designed place. Right now, reality itself is subjective. So when we're arguing over things, don't you see that believing is seeing? So those who believe in the round earth are always going to see a spherical earth just because that is what they believe. So they have to see it. Only until their reality is challenged could they ever see this. Of course, I believe demonic forces are at work, messing with people's realities, with their perceptions, making things matter that shouldn't, and making things not matter that should. But the fact that there is scientific proof to intelligent design and modern science is covering it up tells you all you need to know. So as we argue over these material things, shouldn't we get to the energetic roots of it all? Until we all reach unity in the faith. Science has already figured out that we live in an intelligently designed universe. So now we should all at least agree on that. And then maybe we can find who created it.
The most mind-blowing question in the world. How did we get here? The idea of anything existing makes no sense. The idea that at one point there was nothing, and then suddenly there was something. It just isn't something anyone can wrap their head around. To say that there has to be an intelligent designer, and I'm not saying that there isn't, but the idea of one makes even less sense to me than the very existence of everything. Where did this creator come from if there was nothing? How did he get to be God? Where did his powers and his abilities come from? What was he doing before he created all of this and nothing existed? How long was he in that non-material plane of existence? There's just so much more to question, and these are questions that we'll never get answers to. I do think that it's possible that all of this is a product of intelligent design. I'm not ruling it out, but I don't think that we were created by a God. Not in our current form, at least anyways. As far as humans go, I feel like there's more evidence pointing to an alien intervention than a godly one. What I found interesting about this video, though, was the concept he puts forward of us manifesting things into existence with our minds. This makes me think of all these evil, twisted concerts where they do all this satanic rituals and cast spells on the audience and stuff. They're creating a new reality for those people, obviously in an attempt to manifest something dark. This could be an explanation as to why they all do this sort of thing. If we believe that something is real, and that makes it real, then the constant barrage of satanic programming we receive in the media is just an attempt to manifest the normalization of evil. Maybe if they get enough people to believe that that's just how the world is, then that is how the world will become.
Finally, after all this time, I found one. Ladies and gentlemen, a sulfur ball in the ruins of the city. This has been tested before, and these are almost, very highly pure sulfur. Look at that, look at that. A perfect sulfur ball, just like the Bible says that fire and sulfur destroyed this place. And I believe has been studied and checked and found to be almost entirely pure. Some of the purest, if not the purest, that you can find in the world is in these ashen remains. Is this not enough evidence for people to find all of these man-made looking structures, ashen remains, crumble in your hands, in the location where we're told in the Bible as evidence of God's judgment, as described by Josephus, historian, but then also finding circular, almost pure sulfur balls in the middle of the ash, in the middle of the walls and the shapes of the buildings. Is this not enough evidence for us to see that A, the Bible is true, and B, God is a just God, and we need a Saviour?
I think stuff like this is so cool. While I don't follow the teachings in the Bible, I kind of view it as a sort of history book. I think a lot of the stories in there are true, but it's been proven time and time again that most of the biblical stories came from other religious texts that predate it. This doesn't necessarily mean the stories are false, though. I think the story of Noah's Ark, for example, actually took place. I just think that some of the details are probably a little bit different than how it's depicted in the Bible. That being said, anytime I see evidence like this of a story from the Bible being true, I can't help but be amazed by it. Just the sheer amount of time that's passed since the supposed destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is crazy, and there's still evidence laying all around of sulfur raining from the sky. That's insane. I think this guy is correct, though. I think a lot of the stories in the Bible, though far-fetched sounding, actually did happen, and there's proof to back it up.
6 to 8 million years ago, we shared a common ancestor with what would go on to become chimpanzees and all of these other hominin forms. But what really launched us in that direction is that we did stand upright. There's a lot of explanations for potentially why this happened. We can't know until we have a time machine, if we could go back that far, because this was a behavioral change. But we can see in the morphological form of these ancestors that we did stand upright. We know that happened. It set us on this trajectory that led to our uniqueness. We could attribute a lot of our sort of specialized, what we call derived characteristics, to just standing up. Our heads had to rotate down, which meant our basic cranium became flexed, and it increased our brain size, especially in the frontal lobe. Another unique characteristic is we're the only mammal that has the brain sitting right on top of the eyes.
So your point is that let's look at the grey alien, the classic Whitley Strieber alien being that's cast from numerous witnesses. There are so many people who've described this phenomenon. Whatever it is they're describing, there's a consistency. It's a humanoid, 2 eyes, nose, ears, very, very similar structure to ours. And so you posit that it's more likely than not they're us from the future. Just talk me through why you say that.
Sure. So to circle back to a couple of things when I got all excited and was throwing out anatomical terms, we can go back 400 million years to when we shared a common ancestor with tetrapods. And even though it's not ideal, Darwin pointed this out in the 1850s, it's not ideal to have the same 4-limb structure to do all of these different things. Elephants would be better off with 6 legs or 8 legs, for instance, because of their body weight. So, but we have taken that. We have this highly conserved biomechanical trait of having 4 limbs. On those 4 limbs are 5 digits, and they're used in a lot of different ways. Even if you look at a horse's hoof, you can still see remnants, vestigial remnants of these other parts of the 5-finger pentadactyl anatomy. So you keep going forward. Once we stood upright and we became the only upright walking mammal on this planet, it ushered in all of those changes I was talking about. But there's such a unique evolution that happened that we see the same traits in these others, these visitors, as Whitley calls them, because he doesn't want to attribute any nomenclature to it. And all of us should be cautious of that. Even non-human intelligence is innately biased in that it says these are non-human, and they potentially may be human in some form of it. So even with regard to what happened to us since we became bipedal 6 to 8 million years ago, if you take this long trend in our craniofacial anatomy primarily, which is what I've studied throughout my career, if you look at these great aliens, they seemingly have a form consistent with the continued evolution of these traits, namely an increase in brain size, mediolateral expansion, what we call neurocranial globularity, a continued reduction and retraction of our mid and lower facial anatomy, smaller ears, more intelligence, better technology, potentially the ability to make technology that can allow us to travel backward in time. So there's these suite of characteristics associated with these others that seems to indicate that they're the continuation of what we call in anthropology biocultural evolution, that it's not just their biology evolving, but also the technology which feeds back into that. And you get kind of the self-licking ice cream cone, or this runaway train of evolution caused by both our biology and culture changing in concert with one another.
I think this is such an interesting idea, but I just can't get behind the theory of evolution being the answer. I haven't seen enough evidence to show that evolution is even a real thing in humans. There's too many missing links. I think it's much more likely that if these beings are human, that they were simply a breakaway civilization that decided to go into hiding and spent more focus on building out technology and likely altered their appearance through genetic engineering or something, which we know is a route humans will go down because we're about to go down that route ourselves. I do like this idea though, and it would kind of explain why they don't appear to mean us any harm, why they're just studying us, because they're humans too, and they don't want to harm their own species, even if it's not as advanced as they are. I don't know, maybe.
Do you know how many cases there are of people who got like organ transplants or blood transfusions and they literally take on the characteristics of the donor? Let me give you an example. So this is Terry Cottle, and he was married to his wife Cheryl. Unfortunately, Terry was dealing with a tough time and he unsubscribed. Sonny Graham was going through heart failure and he was the recipient. Sonny would write Terry's family, thanking them for the organ. One day he met Cheryl and they immediately fell in love. In his words, he was like, "It felt like I had known her forever." The two of them get married. 10 years later, he unsubscribes. Now this story has caused a lot of uproar on the internet because people are like, hey, did that heart carry a certain unsubscription gene? So apparently this is pretty common, where people will have some form of an organ transplant, blood transfusion, and they'll start taking on personality changes or different preference changes. Changes can be as simple as like changes in food preference, music, art, sexual orientation, recreational activities, career preferences, as well as specific instances of perceptions of named sensory experiences related to the donors. And we'll go into that with the last experience because it's insane. So insane, it's kind of hard to believe. So there was a 47-year-old white male that needed a heart transplant. The heart he received was a 17-year-old black young man who died in a drive-by shooting. After his transplant, he had a newfound love for classical music. The young man loved classical music and actually died holding his violin. There was an 18-year-old boy who loved music, composing poetry. He was very artsy. He died in a car accident. After his death, his parents came across a lot of his belongings and they went through his books of poetry. And they found a song they had written called "Danny, My Heart Is Yours." The song literally talks about how he felt destined to give his heart to someone. They got in contact with the donor family and guess what? The recipient's name was Danielle. They played some of his music for her and she was able to complete the sentences. The craziest story I read was about an 8-year-old girl that received the heart from a 10-year-old girl. This 10-year-old girl had been attacked and murdered. The heart transplant recipient throughout the night would have nightmares. Parents were worried about her, so they took her to a therapist. The therapist realized that these dreams had a ton of detail, and so he wondered, hey, should I be reporting this to the police? It included details of how it happened, where it happened, what the person looked like. They gave the details to the police. The police were able to identify a suspect. The suspect confessed to the crime. So many of these stories were compiled by Dr. Paul Pearsall, PhD. He's written a couple of books about it. I've posted a couple of videos about this, and the thing that always astonishes me is the thousands and thousands of comments that it gets, where people talk about different changes that they had, or in people that they knew after they had a transplant, blood transfusion, something like that. Cellular memory, epigenetics. It's wild.
This makes me think that maybe we shouldn't be getting organ transplants. I know they're literally a necessity for some people, but hear me out. We don't know what part of the body houses the soul, and when people get these transplants, it's reported that they experience personality changes. Does this mean that you no longer have the will of your own vehicle? Does that mean someone else's essence has essentially taken over control of you? Are you mixing your soul with someone else's? I highly doubt this is the case, but I can't help but wonder because I tie the idea of a soul to my personality. I feel like my soul must be the essence of who I am. So are you damaging your soul by allowing others to have your organs when you pass? And is the recipient damaging their soul by intermingling another one with theirs? That was just a weird question that popped up in my head while I was watching that. What do you guys think? Am I onto nothing here?
The first person to live forever is already alive. At least according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, who explains it with irrefutable logic. It starts with someone that was born in like the past year or so. Our test subject, call him Johnny Boy. The reason Johnny, or any of us, age is because our cells are constantly dividing, making fresh copies of our DNA in each new cell. Our DNA is packed into chromosomes, and since DNA duplication isn't perfect, the tips of these chromosomes are slightly trimmed on every replication. Sort of like making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. The quality slightly degrades each time. To protect against this, our chromosomes have something called telomeres on their tips, which essentially contain junk DNA data that we can afford to lose. But even these telomeres are finite. They get shorter and shorter on every duplication reproduction until at some point they're fully gone. Then the cell stops dividing, gradually loses its function, and withers away. The more this happens in our cells, the more we age, and our bodies experience age-related characteristics. Scientists like David Sinclair are currently getting really close to reversing this process in human cells. He's developed what he refers to a chemical cocktail that can reprogram the way our cells are read to sort of fill in the blanks from these imperfections in our DNA replication. The science behind it is quite extensive, and he ran tests on lab mice that were incredibly successful. Having mice born at the same time with one looking visibly older than the other says that human trials are planned to start within the decade, and it's just a matter of time before we start seeing success in that. So where does this live forever come from? Obviously, the first version of this cocktail won't be perfect and may extend human life to, let's say, 150 years. Now remember our test subject Johnny Boy? In 20 years, he'll be 20, at which time we're almost guaranteed to be undergoing human trials at the very least, if not already publicly available. This life potion is given to Johnny so that he can live until 150. The claim states that by the time Johnny is 40, we're almost guaranteed to make enough advancement to double the anti-aging cocktail so that now he can live till 300. 20 years later, when he's 60, the potion will be improved so that he can live till 500 years old. By the time he's 80, he can live till 1,000. These numbers are all arbitrary, but the general principle still holds up. Even if we start seeing diminishing returns in the improvements of this concoction, Johnny has already hacked his way into living forever. He can already live till 1,000 at this point, so even if it takes 100 more years to improving the medicine to living till, say, 2,000 years old, he'll live until then and take it, constantly outliving the improvement curve of anti-aging until they've cracked the code to the million-year potion, at which point Johnny Boy is essentially immortal, which means one of two things absolutely must happen in our future. One, we colonize other planets, or two, we stop having babies. If people are living forever and no longer dying, our population will continue to grow and just grow and grow, at which point we either need more space to put people, like other planets, or we gotta stop making people. So unless we want to sterilize the entire human race, living forever probably isn't a good idea until we figure this multi-planetary business out.
Actually, with the drop in birth rates, this could be the answer to our prayers. This is extremely exciting even to someone like me who's at the age of 41. In 20 years, I'll be 61 years old and should still be kicking around here somewhere, so I'll likely be able to benefit from this as well. I'm not sure I would trust taking it, but I am sure that as long as it didn't seem to be giving anyone any negative side effects or anything, I would eventually cave in and take it. The idea of being able to watch your kids meet their grandkids, that's just unreal. I wouldn't be able to pass that up.
Have you ever heard of quantum immortality?
No.
It's based off of quantum mathematics. There's an infinite amount of multiverses, and you basically never die because right before you die, consciousness goes into another you in another multiverse. And it just made me think of when we were driving back from Miami. When we were driving back from Miami, and it's like, we could have easily died, and everything since then has been really weird.
Yeah, it's like, who's to say that we didn't die on impact and then we woke up in the median and it's just a similar timeline?
Yeah.
So you're saying when you die, you're just like reborn?
But you go to the same exact scenario to where you don't die.
So it's like like you're respawning in a game.
And someone used the example of what happened to Trump is that we are now living in this different pathway.
The hypothetical path, that would have been a scary world to live in.
Could you imagine what would have happened?
It would have been really not fun.
So the idea is that every time you die in your current reality, your soul shifts into a new reality where you survive the event, and you go on living from there, switching realities or universes with each new death experience. I tell you what, we've gotten a lot of really cool new things to talk about today. I think this idea sounds cool as crap, but I don't know where it comes from. I think it's likely just a fun theory that someone came up with that we'll never be able to verify. It is a really fun one, though.
Hey, this is a farm boy. I hope this don't get me into trouble. I put up a video that talked about food, and well, it got taken down, and I appealed it, it got put back up, then it got taken down, and so I just took it off. Then I reposted the video and give it a different name, and today it got violated, and I got a warning strike, which means the farm boy's account could get banned if I make any more mistakes, lacking authenticity. Well, let me show you something here about authenticity. Now, you guys tell me what you think about this. Can you see those sunflowers? Sunflowers have a thing called heliotropism. They face the sun and curve their face towards the sun every day, all day, every hour to absorb the sun. Can you see there? Yeah. Yeah, they got their face turned away from the sun here. Now, if you look up over through there, you can see the beans and the corn and all that kind of stuff. And they don't have much choice. It's either grow straight up or fall down. But these sunflowers have a completely different mechanism. And for some reason, they don't like the sun. Now, I don't know what's causing that, but I'm inclined to say that the very people that took down my videos also might be responsible for this. I don't know that to be the truth, and I have no one to point a finger at. But I do know that these sunflowers are not facing the right direction. This is a farm boy. Let me know what you think about that.
I don't know what to think about that. This isn't the first video I've seen of sunflowers doing this here lately. I don't know if this has something to do with it or not, but we've also been seeing videos of two suns in the sky or the sun looking like it's digital or something. There's certainly something weird going on with the sun, and while this is another clue, I don't think it really answers any questions. I'm interested to know what y'all's thoughts are on this one. I don't know what's happening here.
So the old school idea of slavery, let's talk about slavery. A government would get slaves, make them work for free, and build things. That's slavery. So they've stopped doing that now. So what do they do now? They get people, make them build things for money, but the government print all the money. So if a government can create as much as they want of something from thin air, and you'll give up your life for this thing they can create from thin air as much as they want, you are still their slave. That's it. You used to be a slave and you'd work all day, and at the end you got food in the house. Now, you work all day, you get money, and you spend all your money on a food and a house. Like, nothing, slavery is still here, my friends. Nothing's changed, right?
So eloquently put, we are all modern-day slaves to a system that gives us the impression of freedom. But the silver lining on this one is, that system is crumbling. We will be out of this soon, I believe that. Things are going to get better. I believe that. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out www.barry-stepp.com if you'd like to order yourself a shirt or a hat and help me support the channel. I greatly appreciate everyone who's ordered anything off of there so far. And don't forget to post your photos of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But with all that out of the way, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all on Monday.